Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm really excited tonight because our guest, I remember watching her on a great show I loved as a kid called 15 or Hillside, as many refer to it. She's done a number of things in her career, and she really is a credit to not only Hollywood, but her family as well. Just a tremendous person. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you Miss Pepper Binkley. And Pepper, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Oh, it's a pleasure for me too. Thank you so much.
So, Pepper, let me ask you this. Did you, as a young kid, want to be an actress? I mean, it seemed like the 15 series, which we'll get to in a second, kind of, came, that was like your first big break. But did you have a desire to be an actress as a young kid?
Yeah, well, I think most kids do, frankly, because it's just natural for all of us to be super playful. So I used to make little shows for my parents and for their friends when they come over, and my brother and I were constantly playing these very imaginative play-based games. And then yeah, I always loved performing, and I was in all of the theatrical productions at school and doing all that. But it's sort of a funny thing. Like I didn't really think about wanting to be a professional actress so much as always wanting to be a part of any performative opportunity I could be a part of.
Right. And like anything else, Pepper, I don't think people realize sometimes just how hard it is to make it in this business. And especially as a young kid, I mean, everything has to go right. And you're lots of times you're auditioning for things against so many people. And I'm sure going in sometimes you're like, well, there's no way I'm going to get this. There's look at the amount of people. So it's not an easy business. But as a young kid, I mean, did you even recognize that, or were you too young to really understand that?
I was way too young to understand that. I also, this probably wouldn't have come up in your research, but I wasn't a part of the audition scene at all. Um, my and I, my father always says that like the connection for like anything really big to happen is everyone always thinks that it's their hard work that makes something happen, but it's not. It's luck, it's opportunity, it's training, it's all of these things coalescing at the same time, and then you get something that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And in my case, for 15, I'd always been performing, as I said, like in school plays and doing all the rest of it. But 15 actually, you would be able to connect the dots if you look at all of the names. But my name on the show is Pepper Alexander, but my name is Pepper Binkley. The producer of the show was my uncle John Binkley, and he'd been doing it for a couple of years. And so when I was about 11, 12 years old, I used to write these brainstorms for characters that I thought were missing from the show. And so I'd send him these letters and brainstorms, these like character sketches for characters that I thought needed to be on the show and that were missing. I'd write like plot lines that I thought were missing from the show. And he was always really kind and would write me back. Um, and then one of these brainstorms that I sent him when I was 12 years old was this character who was a girl that played on the boys soccer team. And she's kind of a tomboy. And I really thought that there was space for this other kind of girl on the show. And he loved it, and he passed it on to the writers, and the writers loved it. And so they wrote this character into the show, and she was this other character's younger sister. And sort of as a reward to me, Nickelodeon Studios said, he said, "Oh, can we just bring out my niece just to audition? Because, as a reward to her, as a thank you for this idea." So I went out and I auditioned, and then Nickelodeon Studios said, like, "This is the girl. We want her to play it," which makes
Right.
sense because it definitely, like, I put a lot of myself into this character sketch that I was sending. Um, and and so he talked to my parents. My mom especially was pretty against me doing the show. She was really protective and didn't want me in the public eye. And of course, this is in the 90s. This is like early 90s. This is like 92. um
Right.
and so it's not like it would be now, right? You still could remain fairly anonymous, but she was hyper aware of not making sure that I didn't have to grow up too quickly, which I think happens for a lot of kids, or maybe all kids that are in the public eye. Um, And my uncle sort of convinced my parents and said, listen, you don't have to say yes to this, but it's a big opportunity. It's not just a small thing. They're not doing this because she's my niece. They're doing this because they love her performance. They think she fits the character. And so
Right.
after some umming and ahhing, they agreed. And that was actually the only professional thing that I did, because my parents, after I did that show, were like, no, that's it. You're not doing anything else until you're an adult and you can decide if you want to pursue this as a profession. So interestingly, that was really an isolated professional experience for me as a kid.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pepper. When that series ended, you did not. And let me just see. I think we might have lost her for a second. Are you there, Pepper?
Can you?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep. Now I could see you. As a kid, after that series, I don't think you went back into act until like 2005 or 2006, correct? It was
Yeah.
a
No, I mean,
while.
I didn't. I was not performing professionally until I graduated from drama school. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think
So,
a couple small things, but like my parents were pretty adamant about. They were like, "You get to do this. This is a special thing." Um, but know that your life is you growing up and being a kid, and then if you decide that you want to be an actress, then you can pursue that when you're an adult.
yeah, and Pepper, I know, for instance, when I talked to Christopher Knight, who of course played Peter Brady on the Brady Bunch, he
Yeah.
mentioned he mentioned how he had to juggle school and they would go to school for 3 hours a day and stuff. So talk to me about what school was like for that whole season that you
Oh
were on
yeah,
15, because I don't think people realize what child actors go through.
it's a
Like,
lot.
they don't have a normal life.
No, no. And I mean, and again, like I think that was something that my parents were aware of, and specifically my mom. And so she was really protective of my childhood. And I think the other thing about 15 is that it was like one of those, it was like the first teenage soap. It was pre 90210. So we were shooting those episodes so quickly. Um, I was only working there for a little over a month, but we shot like 13 episodes in a month. That's really fast. Um, and I was living in Florida, basically in a house that was, so there were two houses. There's one for all the boys on the show and one for all the girls on the show, and each of them had like a house mother. Um, and we go in, and it was shooting at Nickelodeon Studios, which was in Universal Studios. And when we weren't on set, we had these, we were doing homeschool. And so whatever, if you had a homeschool curriculum that was for your entire year, that's what you were working on. Or if you were me, I was going back to school when I think I was going back into 8th grade once I was done with the show. So I was getting sent the lessons for the week that I was missing at my school, which was back in San Diego where I grew up. But it was interesting because you would finish your work in whatever time you would finish it. And then we actually had quite a bit of free time. And so, we had like backstage passes, and we were allowed to roam around at Universal Studios. And it was pretty wild. It would not happen now.
Yeah, most definitely. And the thing is, too, Pepper, like you mentioned, you had to shoot a lot of episodes in 1 month.
Yeah.
I mean, for even though you're a kid, and I know kids, their energy level is different than adults. I mean, kids don't want to go to bed a lot of times, but
Yeah.
still, that is quite the grind to ask out of somebody who was, and what were you at the time? Maybe 12 years old? I mean,
I just
you
turned
know,
15. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a lot to ask of them. I mean, I have two kids, and they're not in the public eye at all, and they won't be, and they're actually both quite performative. And I sort of feel the way that my mother did, which is, they can decide if they want to do that later in life, but I wouldn't put them in front of a camera now. Um, but it is a grind. And there was a point about halfway through the show. I think my parents came out to visit me, and again, I'd never been away from home for that long. I hadn't gone to like sleepaway camp or anything. And they came out to visit, and up until that point I'd kind of been fine. But when they left, I was so homesick that it was like debilitating. And there was one day where I couldn't get to set. You know what I mean? I was a kid, and I wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there anymore. And then I had to get called in to the producer's office, which was my uncle, which is wild. And and also the other actors at the time didn't know that he was my uncle because I was using this stage name just sort of to give a little separation and not make it. But he had to talk to me about professionalism and say, like, listen, we rearranged your scenes for today, but we can't do that tomorrow, and you need to show up. Um, and that was really hard and confusing.
Yeah, and I definitely could see that. And interestingly enough, Pepper, the show used your real name
Oh
on
yeah,
the show. Yeah.
I know.
So, I mean,
They had a character name, and then they cast me in it, and they said, "Well, we love her name. Her name is such a great character name," and so they made it the character's name. Um, which is actually in like my name Pepper is a last name of my mom's side of the family, and is my given name, but I haven't met very many people who have the given name Pepper. But there are a lot of characters. You have Pepper in Annie, of course.
yeah.
You have Pepper in Iron Man. There's Peppers all over the place as characters. And so I'm not surprised that the writers and the, team at Nickelodeon thought, oh, that's fantastic. Let's use her real name. But it was also, it then was confusing because I did play, so, the character played on this boys soccer team. When I was 13, I was playing very competitive soccer. And, the show didn't come out for about 6 months, but once the show was out and I was on the soccer field, people would spot me and say the name of the character, which was also my name, or I'd be walking through the airport and they'd see me and they'd recognize me and they'd say my character name, which was also my name. And so it was pretty disconcerting. And so I really didn't have any desire to work professionally after that for a really long time. It was a good 10 years.
Right. And what I always say about shows like 15 and then of course Degrassi, which came out around that time in the 90s, like Canada put out some great TV because
Yeah.
I really liked those series a lot. The
Yeah.
writing was phenomenal, the actors were phenomenal. And interestingly enough, like I said though, those shows really kind of were, like you said, pre 90210. They kind of paved the way for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty remarkable in the sense because you were doing like a teen show, but it was like a soap opera.
Yeah.
So it had like a soap opera setting. And I had Robin Ross on my show last week. And what I said to her
You
was,
did? I just
yes,
saw her.
yeah.
She
And what I said to
just
her,
in New York, and she just came to see my show in New York. I haven't seen her since I was a kid. It was wild.
yeah, and real nice person as well.
Mhm.
But what I mentioned to her was what I always found unique about the show is you never saw one adult in that show. It was
No.
all kids all the time. You heard about the coach, you heard about certain
Yeah.
parents, this mother was hard on their kid or whatever, but you never saw them. You never saw the teachers. It was just kids throughout the entire show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, intentionally so. My uncle, who's a producer, he did a show prior to that show, which again paved the way for 15. It was called No Adults Allowed, and it was kids tackling adult topics, but there were no adults on set, and so that was a very intentional choice to have just kids and no adults as a part of the show. And I think that, it's aimed at kids. They're talking about some adult topics or, adult adjacent topics, young adult topics, in their own voices. And so it can feel like a secret, in a way. So I think that there were a lot of people of my generation or just slightly older, because I was on the younger side, right? There's it was sort of aimed at like a little older than me.
Yeah.
At the time, I think Ryan Reynolds was 16 when I was on the show. So it was like aimed at like around his age for the viewer. But they kind of felt like it was a secret, right? Like the adults weren't witnessing what was happening on set, at least as far as like or in the classroom, at least as far as the kids were watching it, as far as the audience knows.
And I really think this, Pepper, obviously, I believe that the show had to have been canceled because it seemed like they were setting a lot of things up as season 4 was going on for a
Uh,
season 5. And really, characters like yourself and Russ and Jason
oh
and
yeah.
those characters, they were kind of taken, the baton was being passed to them to be
Mm-hmm.
that older group now. They were kind
Yeah.
of like, the characters, Matt, as you saw, his character kind of went away in season 4, Ashley, things like that. It seemed like your group was going to be that new group. So
Mhm.
was it a little disappointing that there wasn't a season 5 at all?
I don't think I was aware of it at the time because I was so young that the entire experience just felt like a massive adventure. Um, and by the time it was out, so I didn't have the experience of it being out and looking forward to another season. I just had that experience of doing the show, being at Universal Studios, having this wild adventure, doing my homework, being away from my parents, shooting a professional series, running around Universal Studios and like going on the rides and then running back to set. So it was this kind of adventure. But while I was filming, I was anonymous still. Nobody knew who I was. So I was able to run around Universal Studios and just have a great time. I remember I used to do that with this kid, Micah. Um, and I didn't have to, and I had to get my homework done, but it was fun. After the series came out, and people started to recognize me, it started to be a mixed bag where I felt, sort of the pressure of how people's perceptions of me affected how I felt. Um,
Right.
so I think I don't even know if it was promised to me that there was going to be a fifth season. I mean, it was not something I was aware of at the time, but I think it would have been, if there had been a fifth season, I would have had more mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. And I look at it this way, Pepper. Again, like you saw the bond that like those characters had with each
Yeah.
other on the show, and I'm sure off screen as well.
Yeah.
You got to make lifelong friendships, and I think that's the biggest reward you got out of it. Is there were kids that you didn't know, and you got to meet them being on the show, and you probably still connect with them a little bit today.
It's wild. I think I was one of the youngest on the show. I think that some of the older, I don't really keep, so Robin Ross, I'm in a show right now in New York, and Robin Ross came to see it, and I hadn't seen her since I was a kid. So I wouldn't have recognized her if I didn't know that she was coming. But it was really exciting and fun to see her. But I think I was so young. The kids that were in my cohort, were still living at home with their parents and weren't emancipated. And so we kind of kept in touch for a little bit right after the show came out, but we were young enough that like the rest of our teenage years took over. And remember, this was in the early 90s. So there was no, like, we didn't have cell phones. There's no social media. There was no, it wasn't, AOL didn't even exist. So like to keep in touch, I had to make phone calls or send letters.
Yeah.
And so I did a little bit, but I was also 13. And so
Right.
like, pretty soon the drama of my own life and the things that I was going through at school, like far surpassed any sort of like drama that I had from that series. And so I, it, I have found later in life that people that I've worked with on shows or on series have become lifelong friends because you do have this very intimate connection with people that you perform with. And the show I'm doing right now in New York, it's a Puerto Rican, directed by a Puerto Rican actor or director named Daniel Irizarry. And he and I did a movie together 17 years ago and just have kind of watched each other's work and circled each other's work. And I put him in things. And now I'm in his show. And I think that happens as an adult, but I wasn't an adult, the
Right.
kids that were 16, 17, 18, they were adults. They were moving into like their professional career as young adults. And I was 13. I was still really very much a kid. And so my experience and Russ was like, I think a year or two older than I was. Jason was my age, and I'm using their character names.
Yeah.
Wait, am I? This is the thing. It's so long ago. Micah was my age.
Yes.
But there were only a couple kids that were about my age.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, Pepper. Obviously, you were a very good soccer player. Did you continue soccer in high school? Did you play for your high school team?
Yeah, I did.
Team?
Yeah. I played all the way through high school. I didn't play in college.
Right. But I mean, how was that experience in high school? You obviously had a passion for soccer. I mean, did you
Yeah.
enjoy the 4 years in high school playing?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I mean, I played both on the I started on the varsity team in freshman year and played all the way through, and then I also played club team, you know, but again, this is the 90s, so it's gotten so much more competitive now. At the time, I was sort of at the top level of competition, but even in the top level, there were some kids that were Olympic development quality, and then there was myself, and I was very good, but I was never going to be competing with that group of kids. But I loved it. Soccer was very much a part of my growing up experience. It took up most of my weekends and a lot of my time at school. And then I was also acting at school, and I was doing stuff from when I woke up in the morning until midnight. I was that kind of a person. Lots of it.
Right. So let me ask you, Pepper, after uh, high school ended and stuff like that. And again, you didn't get back into the acting until like 2006,
Mhm.
2007. Uh, in that time, what did you do? I mean, obviously you went to college and things like that, but what did you do in the interim during that time?
Yeah, so I went to college. I went to Princeton, and I actually applied as a math major, and then I was an engineer, and I wound my way into the theater department, which doesn't have a degree at Princeton, but you can do a thesis through the English literature program. So that's what I ended up doing. Graduated with an English degree and did a theater thesis. Um, and at the end, and the thesis was directed by a professor of mine who became a mentor. His name is Roger Babb, and he was in Joe Chaikin's Open Theater in New York City um, in the 70s. And he's just a remarkable person and kind of really gave me a taste for all the ways that theater could be something other than what you expect if you're going to a Broadway show. And in my senior year at Princeton, I applied to drama schools. I only applied to 4 or 5. I was anticipating either getting into drama school or moving to New York City and kind of auditioning and seeing what happened. And I ended up getting into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, which is in London. And I went there for 3 years and then graduated in 2004 and came back to New York City. And then I started working. I think my first show, let's see, I graduated in 2004. I think my first show was in 2005 at the Atlantic Theater. I did the Cherry Orchard.
Right. And Pepper, the thing about theater, and I say this a lot to people I interview who have been in theater, when you're doing a show like 15, if you mess up, you could do a retake. You could do dozens of retakes. But in theater, you really can't mess up. Like you're live every night and you have to perform at the highest level. But it's amazing to me, any shows I go to, just how they seem to do it so effortlessly and do it so well. And, they hit a home run every time they're out there. But I mean, talk to me about doing theater and how, you have to pretty much be on your game because you're going live all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a theater person at heart, and that's where my home is as an actor. I love all kinds of theater uh, because it's an actor's medium. Once you've gone through the rehearsal process and you're on stage, then you take over, and it's the director's done their work, but um, yeah, like you said, you have to be on the entire 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours that you're on stage, and no one's going to save you. So it is almost like a fugue state where you're living in a slightly different consciousness for the state of the play. At least that's how I feel. Um, that you've got these words in your head, and every night is both the same and completely different. So it's an improvisation every night because you're using your entire self. And some plays allow for more improvisation or even audience participation than others, but they all demand that you interact with your audience and that you calibrate your performance energetically to the space. Um, I tend to think that film and TV are more of a director's medium. Like you said, you can do many takes and they can all be very different. But
Yeah.
in the end, the person who is sculpting your performance, unless you're doing something in a single take, which is pretty rare on camera, then the director and the editor are really shaping your performance. And so it's a Frankenstein of everything that you have put out into the world. And I don't know, 99 times out of 100, if when I see my performance on camera, it doesn't even resonate for me. So I find it hard to watch myself on camera because I watch it and think like, oh, that's not what I thought I was doing. And frankly, it's not what I was doing because it's always many takes put together. It's almost always many takes put together. Pretty rare that you're doing something in a single take, or that you are interweaving your improvisation with the text, which sometimes it happens on camera, and I've done that on camera, but it's not the usual way.
Right. Now, let me ask you, are there any shows that you've done that stand out to you? We'll talk about this current one you're doing, but are there any that stand out to you where you just loved playing the role so well and, had a love for doing it?
On stage?
Yes, on stage. Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, my most favorite jobs on stage have been where I have been able to collaborate with the writer and director. So I'm a part of a theater company in New York called Ensemble Studio Theatre. I'm also an associate artist for a company called the Woodshed Collective. Ensemble Studio Theatre works with young writers that oftentimes workshop their shows at EST, and then they'll end up going off Broadway or on to Broadway. Hand to God, for example, started at EST. And so any show I've done there, whether it's a workshop production or even just a reading, I love working with other artists at like the beginning of their process with the writing. And I love being a part of a company. So, and then the Woodshed Collective does these immersive theater productions, and I did a couple of them, many years ago now. It's incredibly time consuming and pays practically nothing. So all the work that I love the most, I got paid almost nothing to do because it's more collaborative and it's more experimental and exciting. So the Woodshed Collective would do these in situ pieces. There was a piece that we did called 12 Ophelias by Carrie Dodd-Svitch, which had a bluegrass band in it, and it was set in McCarran Park Pool when it was still like an empty, it was post Parks Project, empty space, abandoned pool in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint. It's now since been refurbished and turned back into a pool, but at the time in the 2000s, it was being used as an event space. So there were huge concerts there, and we did this play for a whole summer there called 12 Ophelias. And I did another project with them that was on a boat in New York Harbor. And so those are my favorite things I've done. This show that I'm doing right now is an experimental project at La Mama. And but even if I get to be collaborative with people in film as well, anytime I'm able to be collaborative on stage or in film, that's my favorite thing to do. I did a show with a couple of filmmakers last spring in Maine, and it was a play that the writer, they're a husband-wife team, and they made this film called Tumble Down, where I had a very small part in that. And then I went back and worked with them in Portland, Maine this time last year for her play, which was called Childish, and I just loved it. It's like I was able to go for a month and a half or a month of full-time work, hit the ground running. It was a 2 hours and 40 minutes show, and it was just like 4 people talking the entire time. It was just demanded so much of me, and it's really like riding a wave when you get to be in a show like that where you're just on stage the entire time.
Yeah, I don't see how anything could beat it. I really don't. And just talking to so many different actors who have done stage, I mean, they love what the rush is like doing stage. There's nothing that compares to it. Real quick, we talk about soap operas, and I remember, I would say like probably 2009, 2010, a popular soap that you got to do a few episodes in was All My Children. I remember you played the nurse in that episode. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
I mean, I'm sure there's many people who've seen that, but like, I don't even know if I've seen it.
yeah. And, I just remember like, at the time I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, this, actress looks familiar, but I can't pinpoint who she is. Then you go and look the person up. As soon as I saw the name Pepper, on the credits, you knew who it was. But I mean, just talk about like getting to be on an iconic soap like that. Cause I think even if you did one episode, that's a pretty cool thing for you.
Oh yeah. Well, uh, especially, I think it's less the case now, but if you were a working New York actor, in, the 90s to late 90s, I was still in college then, but like 2000s, even early 2010s, everyone did those soap operas and or all of the Law and Orders, and so it was really great to be on that set because a lot of those soap actors, it was their bread and butter to be a part of this show where they were shooting everything so fast and furious. It's like their
Yeah.
minds working so quickly, but talk about not very many takes. Like they're just doing what they're doing, and then you're on and off very quickly.
Yeah.
It's not a labored process, and I loved it. It was just a lot of fun, and it's fun to be with all of these other working actors that they're doing the soap opera during the day, and then oftentimes they would take a month off and be doing a Broadway show or something. So there was a real community around those shows at that time, and I think it's changed a little bit. There's not theater and TV in New York are different now than it used to be.
Right. And I think about this too, Pepper. Again, you talk about there's a Pepper in a lot of different things. Well, you did a little short thing called Writer's Block, and they used the name Pepper. I think it was like 2013, 2014. So, I mean, the name Pepper is very popular. And so
Yeah,
it's pretty
they love
cool.
for characters.
Yeah. So when you get to see your name in different things like that and they're using it as a character, I mean, it's got to make you feel good as well, because I mean, like that's your name and it's your identity. And when they want to use it on the big screen or wherever they want to use it, it's got to be a good feeling as well.
It's fun. Yeah, it's fun. It's just sort of it's interesting. I've definitely had people they just yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about whether or not it's like a good thing or a bad thing, but it's fun.
So let me ask you this, Pepper. You mentioned you have two kids now. Do you happen to have a daughter that's like 11 or 12 years old? Or
No, not yet.
okay, because that's good. Because one of the things I was thinking about before we went on the air today is you're very creative with writing and you love the stage. I would love to see a situation where your daughter plays you as a kid, Pepper, not from
Yeah.
15, Pepper the person, and you are the narrator being Pepper, like looking back at your childhood. I think that would be something cool that you could do with your daughter, and it'd
Yeah.
be really cool to do. Is that something you ever thought about?
I haven't thought about that, but it is interesting to sort of to like look back. Everyone mines their own life for stories. I just went to go see a show that was on Broadway. A couple of weeks ago while I was in rehearsal, called Liberation, and the writer Bess Wool is basically a memoir where she is looking back both at herself and at her mother when her mother was part of the women's liberation movement. And the actress playing that character plays Bess Wool, the playwright. I mean, and she doesn't say that, but it is the playwright. And she also plays the mother,
right?
In the 70s. And so, yeah, I think that it's pretty natural actually to go back and kind of mine your own life and then imagine like who might play that and whether or not that's like your kid or someone else, or you're able to be a mentor to someone. It's an interesting dynamic that happens a lot in theater and in creative spaces, because whether you're talking about your own kids or just mentorship relationships with older or younger actors, it's very common to have those relationships with older and younger actors.
Right. And I look at it this way, it'd be something fun that you could do with your daughter, and she's not having to deal with the pressures of being a child actress like you had to deal with. And I know you don't want to put them in that situation, but a stage play, I think would be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's something that you and her could do together which would be really cool. I mean, listen, you see different kids play their parents in different things because it works out that way. I just think that would be something down the road. It'd be neat to see.
Absolutely.
So Pepper, let me talk to me about this current play that you're doing in New York right now. That again, you talked about seeing Robin last week. Talk about this a little bit.
Well, the show that I'm doing right now is called Class Dismissed, and it's bordering on performance art. It's extremely wild and chaotic. The writer, Robert Lyons, is a downtown playwright who's been around for many years. He ran and he started the New Ohio Theater, which closed a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And this show that we're doing actually was the closing show for the New Ohio in workshop. Now it's having its full premiere at La Mama. There's 4 of us on stage. My character is a lit professor talking about her experience at a writer's retreat, but it's really not a literal play. So it's bordering on performance art. If you go in and you're expecting a 3-act play, you're not going to get it. But if you're going in ready to have a lot of fun and collaborate with the people on stage, then you'll have a blast. It sort of feels like a circus. It has this real spirit of old downtown experimental theater. And the director, Danielle Irizarry, is, as I said before, a Puerto Rican actor-director that I've worked with for a long time, although we kind of went our separate ways and did other projects. But when he called and asked if I would be a part of this, I said, absolutely. It's a total blast. It's really, really wild. I have some experimental theater friends who've come to see it and have said that it is the craziest thing they've ever seen. So it's fun.
Right. And now, how many more shows are you going to be doing of it? Like as of right now, I know, like,
2 more weekends. So it's so Thursday this weekend. There's Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. The first one on Saturday is at 9 a.m. and it's live streaming to both Turkey and to South Korea because there are performers in Turkey and South Korea that are doing poems that are in the show. So just for that one performance. And then the following weekend, the same is true. So it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Wow. Well, that's really cool. And I mean, it seems like to me, you continue to work, and I'll tell you, I don't know where you find free time, but I give you a lot of credit because you're always on the go. But I really do appreciate you giving me a few minutes today. I know you're very busy, and it was a real honor for me, but I really do applaud everything you're doing and what you've done over the years. And like I said, for me, being a kid growing up with shows like 90210, 15, Degrassi, all that, it's always cool to, see what the characters I really enjoyed watching, what they do in their adult lives. And I really do compliment you on everything you're doing. So just keep up the great work, and thank you for giving me a few minutes.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And folks, of course, that's the one and only Pepper Binkley. If you get the opportunity, check out all her work. I mean, all you have to do is just look her up. You'll see a bunch of things. She's done over like 40 films in her career between TV and movies. And like I said, she's a credit to the industry and also a credit to her family. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.